Before we begin, please note, this video contains content meant for educational and commentary purposes only. All individuals mentioned are presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Now, no one expected this. The courtroom was already on edge, tense from days of bombshell footage, conflicting testimonies, and whispered rumors. But when the next witness was called, the energy completely shifted. Mariah Carey. At first, there was silence. Complete, frozen silence. Even the court reporter stopped typing, and then heels echoed against the floor. A figure appeared at the doors. Black tailored suit, gold accents, oversized shades. It was her, Mariah Carey. Not on stage, not at an awards show, but walking toward the witness stand in federal court. And this time she wasn't singing, she was ready to speak. What she revealed didn't just shake the courtroom, it rattled the silence Diddy had built his entire empire on. A confession, a warning, a moment she never wanted to relive, but couldn't stay quiet about any longer. This is the testimony that cracked the mask, and what Mariah said left everyone stunned. The doors creaked open. She didn't need an introduction. Mariah Carey, yes, that Mariah, walked into the courtroom like it was the Grammy stage, but there was no music, no lights, no applause, just tension. Diddy looked up briefly, his lips tightened, a twitch, a blink, 1 second of surprise before his face reset like nothing had happened, but everyone saw it. Even the judge raised an eyebrow, barely, but enough to break her usual composure. Outside, the chaos exploded. Just scrambled, feeds cut to breaking news. Mariah Carey enters federal courtroom to testify in Diddy trial. Inside, it felt surreal. Not because she was famous, but because she had nothing to gain. She wasn't suing. She wasn't defending herself. She was risking everything to speak. When Mariah reached the witness stand, she slowly took off her sunglasses, as if peeling off 20 years of silence. A whisper rippled through the gallery. She's actually going through with it. The prosecutor didn't waste a second. Miss Carey, can you please tell the court the nature of your relationship with Mr. Sean Combs? Mariah's voice was steady. We were acquaintances, she said plainly. Not friends, not collaborators, just two people in the same orbit. No sugarcoating, no hesitation. Then she added, I never had a personal issue with him until 2003. That was the moment every head turned, including Diddy's. He didn't blink, he just froze. His attorney leaned in, whispering rapidly, but he didn't respond. He already knew what was coming. And Mariah, she didn't flinch. I'm not here for rumors, she continued. I'm here because of what he told me in private. Something I never thought I'd have to repeat. Under oath. The jury leaned forward. Phones outside the courtroom lit up. The entire energy in the gallery shifted. Everyone realized this wasn't performance. It was testimony from a woman whose silence had finally reached its limit. And then came the line that cracked the room open. I've waited over 20 years to say this. It didn't sound like a dramatic punchline. It sounded like a warning, because whatever came next wasn't gossip. It was lived. Mariah went on to explain how from the late 1990s through the early 2000s, her life and Diddy's had overlapped constantly. Music events, award shows, industry dinners. He was always present, she said, not just physically, but politically. He was in every room, even when he wasn't on the guest list. She recalled one specific night, the 2001 MTV Video Music Awards. At an after-party, Diddy approached her. He complimented her album. At face value, it was polite. But Mariah remembered something strange about the moment. He told me he respected my work, she said, but something about the way he said it felt layered. Mariah's voice didn't waver, but her words cut deeper now. She told the jury about a moment that had stayed with her. The first time Diddy looked her in the eye and said, "You're too clean for this room. That's not always safe." She gave a small laugh while repeating it, the kind of nervous chuckle people use to smooth over something that never sat right. But the courtroom didn't laugh. Neither did the jury. It wasn't the last time I'd hear that phrase, Mariah added, and the room shifted again. Pens scribbled faster, eyes narrowed. She started painting a clear picture of the music industry in the early 2000s. Not just competitive, but carnivorous. It wasn't about who had the biggest hit, she said. It was about survival. Allegiances weren't optional. They were insurance. She explained that there was a common belief being seen with Diddy meant safety, visibility, power. power. But for some, it meant something darker. There were whispers, she said, too many to ignore, about locked doors, NDAs before drinks, and invitations that came with unspoken rules. The prosecutor leaned forward and asked plainly, "And if someone refused those conditions?" Mariah didn't blink. "You didn't get invited again," she said. "And pretty soon, you didn't get the calls, the features, or the award shows either." One name, she said, kept coming up again and again. Not as a leader, not even as a peer. People described him as building something else, not a label, not a brand, an empire, but not the kind they write press releases about. She admitted she never pushed back against the rumors. She didn't need to. She stayed quiet until 2003. That's when everything changed. Her voice sharpened as she leaned closer to the mic. Even the back rows of the gallery sat up. "It was July 19th, 2003, she said. "I was told it was just an industry retreat in the Hamptons. Supposed to be networking, light drinks, good optics." She'd just wrapped a music video shoot and was exhausted, but her manager urged her to go. "Everyone big is going to be there," they told her. "It'll be good for the image." The host was Diddy. Mariah arrived late. The house was massive. An oceanfront estate with tinted windows and not one but two security checkpoints at the gate. Inside were celebrities, executives, producers, and a few unfamiliar faces, but something was off. There were people there who didn't look like entertainers, she said. They looked like watchers. By 10 p.m., she'd had enough. She'd made her rounds. She was drained. She wanted to leave. But just as she was heading out, Diddy approached her. He was calm, not smiling, she recalled. He asked if I'd join him in the private lounge. She declined at first, said she was tired, but he kept pressing, told her he just wanted to clear something up. So she agreed. He led her down a long hallway into a dimly lit side room tucked behind the main living space. It was quiet, furnished with velvet chairs. Soft jazz drifted through hidden speakers. Two men stood outside the door as it shut. Inside, Diddy poured himself a drink. "And then he just stared at me," Mariah said quietly. "Didn't speak, just stared." The room fell completely silent as Mariah recounted the moment that haunted her for decades. After inviting her into the private lounge, Diddy had poured himself a drink and just stared. For what felt like forever, he didn't speak. Until he finally said in a low, steady voice, "If they find out what I really do, it's over." The courtroom froze. Mariah didn't dramatize it. She didn't need to. Her tone stayed calm, but the meaning hit like a storm. She told the court he wasn't smiling, he wasn't joking. He said it like a man who had already seen his empire collapse in his mind. She asked him what he meant, but he didn't answer. He changed the subject. When she tried to leave, he stepped in front of the door. Not aggressively, just in the way. Then, with a small smile that didn't quite reach his eyes, he said, "You'll be taken care of. Just don't talk, ever." Mariah didn't respond. She walked out without another word. But inside, she carried that moment for 20 years. "I'm not staying silent anymore," she told the court. She testified that the very next morning, before the sun had even risen, she quietly checked out of the estate in the Hamptons. The house was quiet. Security didn't question her. They barely looked at her. Her longtime assistant was waiting with the car, and the entire drive back to Manhattan happened in complete silence. "I didn't know what I had just witnessed," she said. "It felt like a warning, like I wasn't supposed to be there." But the warning didn't end there. Hours later, around noon, as she was settling back into her penthouse suite at the St. Regis, there was a knock at the door. A hotel concierge handed her a sleek black envelope. "This just came by private courier," he said. "No return address. Just 2 silver letters on the front. M. Inside was $100,000, 0 cents in fresh, crisp bills, bundled neatly with gold bands. Underneath the money was a second envelope, smaller and heavier. Inside that was a handwritten message. Just one line. "For your time, keep the night to yourself. S." Mariah said her stomach dropped. It wasn't just the money, she told the jury. It was the message, the tone, the assumption that I could be bought. She showed the envelope to her manager, who immediately told her to return it. But when they tried calling the number printed on the card, it had already been disconnected. Later, hotel security confirmed that the courier had arrived in a black SUV, linked to a rental company frequently used by Bad Boy Entertainment. "I didn't want the money," Mariah said. "I wanted answers, or at the very least, space from that world. But what I got instead was fear." She placed the entire envelope, every bill, every note, into the hotel safe. A few weeks later, she mailed it back to the estate. No return name, just 5 words written on the package. "You know where this belongs." For years, she told no one, not even the people closest to her. It was one of those events you bury, she said. You try to forget it happened. But when she saw Diddy walk into court facing accusations of abuse, blackmail, and more, the memory came roaring back. "I knew I had to speak," she said. "I couldn't let that envelope sit in silence anymore." Then the prosecutor asked a question that changed the room's temperature once again. "Miss Carey," she said gently, "were you aware of any other women at that 2003 party who expressed concern or who disappeared afterward?" Mariah hesitated. For the first time since taking the stand, she looked truly shaken. Her voice dropped. "There was one," she said. "She wasn't famous. She wasn't an artist. I think Mariah took a breath, then continued. "She worked in marketing, maybe PR. We only spoke for a few minutes," she said. The woman's name, or at least the name she gave, was Lana. She wasn't famous, just another guest at the party, blending in with the crowd of executives and industry insiders. But Mariah remembered something odd. Lana had told her she felt out of place, like she didn't belong in that house, like the invitation had come with strings she hadn't seen until it was too late. Then came the moment that chilled the room. Lana had mentioned quietly that she had walked into the wrong room during the party. She thought it was a bathroom or maybe a side office. Instead, she saw bright lights, a full camera setup. A man was seated under those lights, signing some kind of paperwork while another figure stood behind him, watching. She didn't stay. She didn't ask questions. She closed the door and walked away. And that was the last time Mariah saw her. Later that night, she realized Lana was gone. She didn't think much of it at the time. People come and go at parties, but looking back, no one mentioned her again. It was like she'd been erased mid-scene. 2 months later, Mariah received a voicemail on her studio line. It was short, barely a whisper. A woman's voice said, "I shouldn't have seen that. They told me not to talk to anyone. You should be careful too." And then, click, gone. Mariah never got the chance to trace it. A studio intern accidentally deleted the message while clearing old files later that day, or at least that's what they told her. Still, the voice lingered. She couldn't prove it, but she believed it was Lana, and it haunted her. In early 2004, she asked her manager to quietly look into Lana's identity. What came back wasn't comfort, it was silence. "She's gone," her manager said. "No record, no new job listings, socials wiped clean." He warned her, gently but firmly, not to press it. Mariah said she knew then something was wrong, but I also knew how the industry worked, she told the court. People who poked around didn't last. The judge asked if she had any proof linking Diddy to Lana's disappearance. Mariah didn't pretend. "No physical evidence," she replied. "Just fear. The same fear that kept me quiet for 20 years. But that fear, those gaps in memory, those strange envelopes, that missing woman, they weren't isolated. Prosecutors were already connecting the dots. Missing assistants, silenced backup dancers, women whose names disappeared from rosters overnight. Now they had a pop icon under oath testifying that she too had been pressured to stay silent. By 2004, Mariah's public life looked stable again. Her career was back on track, slowly recovering from the fallout of her 2001 breakdown. But behind the scenes, she said the air had shifted. The phone stopped ringing for certain events. Not everything, but the ones that mattered, the ones tied to his people, private galas, exclusive label events, award ceremonies hosted by networks with direct ties to Diddy's brand. Suddenly, she was missing from guest lists she'd been on for years. At first, she thought it was coincidence, a change in management maybe, but then the calls started. Quiet, polite, wrapped in compliments. One stood out. A well-known executive from a major label called her personally. "Mariah, you're incredible, but I'd suggest you not bring up that night again. It's not healthy for anyone." Those words stuck with her. Not healthy. She said that phrase echoed in her head for years. It didn't sound like advice. It sounded like a warning in disguise. And the pressure wasn't over. Mariah didn't sugarcoat what happened next. After the St. Regis envelope, after the strange voicemails and disappearing faces, she received a final warning, this time through a mutual acquaintance. The message was short, but it landed like a slap. Bad things happen to women who talk too much. Mariah told the jury, "I was disgusted, I was furious, but I was also smart. You don't survive this long in the industry without knowing when a warning is real." She pivoted to a moment that had stayed frozen in her memory for years. It was 2006, an awards ceremony packed with flashing lights, screaming fans, and too many cameras. She spotted Diddy across the ballroom, laughing loudly, surrounded by younger artists like he was holding court. But when their eyes met across the room, everything stopped. He froze, just for a second, then gave her a smile. Cold, controlled, calculated. That smile told me everything, she said. It wasn't charm, it was control. It was him saying, "You stayed quiet. Good girl." Mariah had never spoken to him again after that, not publicly, not privately. That one look was enough to confirm what she already knew. Silence had always been the expectation. But as the 2025 trial unfolded, something shifted. Watching other women come forward, watching people she never thought would speak finally speak, watching the cracks split open in the industry's polished surface, she made a choice. "I'm not afraid of him anymore," she told the court. "I'm not afraid of the system that protected him, because once the truth is out, they can't control it." The courtroom leaned in again as the prosecutor asked what sounded like a simple follow-up until the weight behind it hit. "Mr. Carey, were there other individuals you personally heard Mr. Combs threaten?" Mariah exhaled, paused, and then nodded. "Yes, one incident I've never repeated before, but it's time." She told the court that in 2005, during a visit to a Midtown Manhattan recording studio, she'd arrived early for a collaboration meeting. Her producer wasn't there yet, but through a thin wall in a side room, she heard voices. One of them, Diddy's. The other, a young female R&B artist, rising, powerful vocals, gospel roots, the kind of talent the industry labeled the next big thing. Mariah didn't say her full name in court, but she confirmed the initials and timeline matched a once prominent chart topper who had since disappeared from music altogether. Through the wall, Mariah heard the conversation unfold. Diddy wasn't yelling, but his words hit like a weapon. "You remember who gave you those records," he said. "You remember who owned your masters. Don't go talking like you've got freedom. This industry has rules. I make them. You follow. Simple." And then came the part that made the jury visibly tense. Mariah's voice softened, but her words cut even sharper. Then, quieter, with venom, he said, "If you think you can walk away, remember what happened to the last girl who did." Mariah stepped back from the microphone, visibly shaken but still composed. She explained that she had never spoken publicly about the conversation she overheard between Diddy and the young R&B singer. Not because she didn't believe it, but because she feared what would come next. "I didn't want to be accused of mishearing or worse, of making it up," she said. But then, just a few months later, that same artist who had been everywhere vanished from the spotlight. She canceled her tour, dropped out of an awards show, and then nothing, Mariah said, her voice growing quiet. She just disappeared, and no one asked why. Not publicly, because they knew. We all did. Those words stopped the room cold. At the defense table, Diddy sat motionless. His face was unreadable. Lips pressed together, eyes fixed forward. His attorneys leaned in, whispering quickly, but the gallery wasn't focused on them anymore. The damage had been done, and everyone knew it. "I wish I had spoken up then," Mariah admitted, "but I was scared. I thought maybe I was being paranoid, but now, after everything I've seen, I know it was real." This part of her testimony wasn't about herself anymore. It was about every singer, every assistant, every backup dancer who never got a chance to testify. The ones who vanished, the ones whose names faded from charts, from credits, from contracts. For a moment, the courtroom gallery seemed to understand they weren't just watching a trial. They were witnessing a reckoning. By the time Mariah reached the 8th portion of her testimony, the room was fully locked in. Reporters were typing furiously. Jurors looked visibly emotional. Even the judge shifted in his seat, a rare sign of discomfort on the bench. But Mariah remained calm. And then the tone shifted. She began talking about things that pointed to something deeper, more coordinated. There were files, she said. Files people told me not to look at. Contracts, invoices, agreements signed under fake names. Things that didn't make sense. She testified that in 2008, she asked a former assistant to do a background search on an event Diddy had co-sponsored. A high-profile music event that mysteriously never aired, despite having major backing and celebrity attendance. What the assistant uncovered wasn't a simple scheduling issue. Instead, there were shell corporations, shadow companies, payment trails linked to rental firms and fake foundations, all pointing toward a network designed to hide payouts. When her team tried to bring this to a label executive, the response was blunt. "We don't dig into that. You shouldn't either," the courtroom murmured. Quiet gasps and slowing down, the kind of reaction that doesn't come from surprise, but from recognition. Mariah continued, saying that every time she asked questions, the pressure to stay silent grew worse. Her publicist began receiving anonymous tips that old tabloid stories might suddenly resurface. Then came warnings about potential leaks, unreleased studio footage, legal threats, embarrassing narratives, all things that could ruin her if released at the wrong time. "They made it clear," she said, "if I kept digging, they'd start digging too." And then came the final insult. In 2010, Mariah was invited to present Diddy with a Lifetime Achievement Award at a televised ceremony. She declined, quietly, respectfully, and without drama. But within a week, 3 major endorsement deals she'd been negotiating suddenly vanished. No explanation, just gone. She paused, letting that sit with the jury. "It wasn't random," she said. "It was a message." "They didn't even call with an explanation," Mariah said flatly, referring to the endorsement deals that vanished after she declined to present Diddy with an award. "They just went dark." The defense quickly objected, calling her account speculative, but the judge overruled, citing the clear pattern her testimony had already established. The room fell still again as the prosecutor leaned forward. "What happened next?" she asked. Mariah didn't hesitate. "I decided I'd wait," she said. "Wait for the day someone asked me to testify. And when that day came, I wouldn't hold anything back." Her final statement wasn't whispered. It wasn't dramatic or tearful. It was sharp, controlled, devastating. "I'm not here to relive pain," she said. "I'm here because I believe the truth has power. And I'm here to say, loud and clear, Diddy told me exactly who he was. And now the world knows too." The courtroom didn't clap. It didn't gasp. It just fell silent. Even the court reporter looked rattled as she typed the last of Mariah's words. And then, just like that, Mariah Carey stepped down from the witness stand. She didn't smile. She didn't wave. Her security moved quickly to surround her, carving a path toward the courtroom exit. She walked out with the calm dignity of someone who had just thrown a boulder into a still lake and was ready to let the ripples do the rest. Outside, chaos. News cameras flashed, reporters yelled her name, but Mariah didn't stop, didn't turn around, didn't give a single quote. And she didn't need to. Within minutes, hashtags like Mariah testifies and Diddy trial truth were trending worldwide. Talk shows praised her courage, commentators debated every word, headlines screamed. But back inside that courtroom, where the lights were dimmer and the tension heavier, Diddy stayed hunched at the defense table. His legal team sat still. No whispers, no arguments. The judge called for a recess, but no one stood up right away. That evening, footage of Mariah's testimony played on every major network. The quote echoed through every screen. "If they find out what I really do, it's over." What had once sounded like a cryptic line suddenly became a cultural shift. This wasn't just another celebrity court case, it was the unraveling of something bigger. And the woman who lit the match, a pop queen who had once been told to stay quiet, now speaking louder than ever. As one headline put it, she hit the high note and shattered the silence. In the days that followed, the energy shifted, not just in courtrooms, but in boardrooms, in label offices, in studios, executives, agents, producers, former collaborators, all of them suddenly rethinking their silence. Mariah's testimony didn't just make headlines, it drew a line. And once it was drawn, no one wanted to be caught on the wrong side of it. By the time Mariah Carey's words finished echoing through the courtroom, they had already begun bouncing off satellites. TikToks dissected her every glance. Late-night monologues turned her testimony into headline material, and what was once whispered in Hollywood backrooms now danced across investigative specials in primetime. "If they find out what I really do, it's over," was no longer a cryptic warning. It was the prosecution's opening salvo. Suddenly, gossip had become evidence, allegation had become architecture, and Mariah Carey, she wasn't just a pop icon anymore. She was a keystone witness in the collapse of an empire. Behind the scenes, the whispers turned into tremors. Two former executives from Diddy's own label were rumored to have offered sealed testimony. One insider reportedly told Rolling Stone, "If she was brave enough to speak, maybe it's time we all were." Translation: Mariah broke the seal, and now the vault's swinging open like it owes back rent. Elsewhere, an assistant who had once staffed red carpet events sponsored by Bad Boy Entertainment posted cryptically on Instagram, "Some people silenced me, others paid me. I kept the secrets, but no more. Justice is coming." Now, that could be a Marvel movie teaser or a civil subpoena. Either way, the tide was turning. Even celebrities who had maintained Switzer-level neutrality began shifting. Talk show hosts, typically allergic to controversy unless it's neatly packaged with punchlines, applauded Mariah's courage. A-list performers reposted her testimony with a single word: respect. Meanwhile, industry veterans took down old photos with Diddy faster than interns deleting tweets before a brand deal. Quiet edits. Loud meaning. Inside the courtroom, however, the fallout was less curated and more nuclear. Jurors, previously stone-faced, were now visibly shaken. Prosecutors, smelling blood in the water, filed motions to compel more witnesses. Security personnel, former tour managers, anyone whose silence had expired. The defense tried to push back, painting Mariah as dramatic, overly poetic, maybe a little too perfect. But let's be honest, what's more believable? A Grammy-winning diva who hasn't needed a publicity stunt since the Bush administration suddenly fabricating trauma? Or an empire finally cracking under its own secrets? Because here's what no one could argue. Mariah Carey had no motive to lie. She didn't need a payout. She wasn't selling a memoir. She hadn't dropped a surprise album. She came with no entourage, no producers lurking in the shadows, no product to plug, only truth. And that made her dangerous, not in a scandalous headline kind of way, in a speak in the walls start shaking kind of way. She could have chosen to stay silent, could have kept walking past that subpoena, could have let history forget what she saw. Instead, she walked straight into the storm, heels on, head high, and said exactly what needed to be said. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the most dangerous thing a woman in this industry can do. Tell the truth when she's not supposed to. In a rare off-the-record comment, one juror reportedly summed it up perfectly. When she looked at him, it was like she was finally free. And he knew it. This wasn't just testimony, it was transformation. The gallery didn't witness a speech, they witnessed a shift. The ripple effect had already begun, because once someone like Mariah Carey pulls back the curtain, there's no closing it again. Not when the world is finally listening, not when the silence has been shattered by a voice that once only sang. And now, it speaks.